Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hivemind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. And exposing the abundant hypocrisy is going to be more important, probably as important as it's ever been going forward. And of course, you know, we're dedicated to that goal on this channel. Now, one thing we've stated unequivocally on this channel pretty much since the start is the president is a fighter. The president will not back down, will never back down, and he still hasn't. The president is continuing to fire back, hit back, and make his voice heard no matter what the tech oligarchs or the media, frankly, the Democrat machine do to him. And so the GOP doesn't necessarily feel as if it needs to really pander to the Trump base anymore. And of course, the GOP, the establishment, the Democrat establishment, and the Democrat machine are all working in tandem in a widespread, wide-scale attempt to somehow memory hole or vanish or pretend as if Donald Trump and what he's built, the movement of Trumpism, doesn't exist anymore. Just to poof, make it disappear from the public conscience, from the zeitgeist. But it's not exactly that easy, especially when you have a leader who refuses to back down. You cannot stump the Trump, and that's a statement for a reason. And so no matter how many times they try to ban him, there's no way it's over, and the president continues to hit back. So let me show you guys exactly what he said. Let's go over the leftist lunacy. Let's go over the illiberal calls for continued and further escalation of deplatforming and censorship. Let's call them out. Let's cover the president. Let's call out the illiberal, shameful left. But before we get into it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, so of course, we all know that Twitter permanently suspended the sitting US president, President Donald Trump, Mr. 45, in a brazen anti-First Amendment unethical attack on free speech. But of course, we also know that the president has access to a ton of Twitter accounts, not just one. He's got Team Trump, and of course, the @POTUS account, which is the official government presidential account that's going to be passed on to the next president and the next president each and every time there's a transition of power. And of course, I'm sure you guys have already seen this, but we've got to talk about the context. Immediately as the president gets banned from his main account, he goes to the POTUS account and just unleashes. Check this out. As I've been saying for a long time, Twitter has gone further and further into banning free speech. And tonight, Twitter employees have coordinated with the Democrats and radical left in removing my account from their platform to silence me and you, the 75 million great patriots who voted for me. Twitter may be a private company, but without the government's gift of Section 230, they would not exist for long. I predicted this would happen. We have been negotiating with various other sites and will have a big announcement soon. While we also look at the possibilities of building out our own platform in the near future, we will not be silenced. Twitter is not about free speech. They are all about promoting a radical left platform where some of the most vicious people in the world are allowed to speak freely. Stay tuned. And shortly after the president posted this Twitter thread, they immediately nuked it and stopped him from being able to post from that account. He then went to Team Trump, did it again, and they stopped him there and suspended the account permanently. So clearly they're on a crusade to stop the president from being able to communicate with his base. It's absolutely despicable. But what he said here is important. First of all, that he will not be silenced, and by extension, you will not be silenced. The man refuses to give up, and whether or not he's headed into office in 2020, no matter how grim it looks, no matter what he is up against, the man just refuses to give up on you and give up on the values that he stands for, and that must be commended. Just think about the level of stress. Think about the constant antagonizing element, the constant battle with the press and big tech. What does the president really gain from this is what I always question. He's a multi-billionaire. He hasn't had to work a day in his life pretty much since he's like 25, but he continues and he never stops, and he's talking about building a new platform. I'd assume he's probably going to build a brand new network, and if he does, I'll send him my resume almost immediately. But the reality is, you know, we're called the liberal hive mind. The left is anything but liberal. Liberalism is supposed to represent liberty, almost a libertarian element of live and let live. Let people speak, let people have their own opinions, diversity of thought. And the reality is, in the modern day of politics, President Donald Trump is more of a liberal than the Democrats are themselves. What he's fighting for here is beyond Trump. It's beyond his legacy. It's beyond any petty politics. He's fighting for the core of what makes our society great. He's fighting for true progressivism, because you cannot progress without free speech. You cannot get to the bottom of things. You cannot have a clear discussion. You cannot work through ideas or contest bad ideas without freedom of speech, without an opposition. Yet the left seems to only want to exclude and pursue the idea of an echo chamber, pursue the idea of authoritarian leftism where wrongthink is not allowed. And let me show you guys a couple examples of that. So of course we know Google Play blocks Parler from the App Store, Apple Store as well. You have a major Democrat leader in Hillary Clinton celebrating the permanent ban of Trump on Twitter, and that's the mild stuff. Let me show you guys a couple of examples of just how far the left is taking this. Here's Brian Fung, who I believe works for CNN. For weeks, I have been asking Amazon how it is handling reports and complaints from the public about Parler being hosted on AWS. As recently recently as Monday, I was told they were still hoping to get me a response. After Wednesday's events, I renewed my questions, but so far, crickets. I mean, first of all, how unrealistic is it that Amazon is going to go forward with a complete PR disaster, a blunder, by nuking a platform in a total political partisan attack that probably nearly 50% of their consumer base support? Of course, it's never going to happen, but the point is, you have literal CNN dorks like Oliver Darcy and Brian Fung who are actively pushing and applying pressure on major corporations to silence and destroy their political opponents. This is about destroying the right. This is about destroying Fox News. Oliver Darcy has literally been pushing for cable networks to drop Fox News. Of course, because within the mind of a liberal, within the mind of an elitist, a narcissist, only they can disseminate information and set the narrative. This, my friends, is what we continually call the authoritarian left. We've got this story right over here. Mozilla, developers of Firefox, we need more than deplatforming. Baker's statement reads as, since then, there has been significant focus on the deplatforming of President Donald Trump. By all means, the question of when to deplatform a head of state is a critical one, among many that must be addressed. When should platforms make these decisions? Is that decision-making power theirs alone? But as reprehensible as the actions of Donald Trump are, the rampant use of the internet to foment violence and hate and reinforce white supremacy is about more than any one personality. Donald Trump is certainly not the first politician to exploit the architecture of the internet in this way, and he won't be the last. We need solutions that don't start after untold damage has been done. Baker then went on to make a list of what she thought should be done to curb this problem. Additional precise and specific actions must also be taken. Reveal who is paying for advertisements, how much they are paying, and who is being targeted. Commit to meaningful transparency of platform algorithms so we know how and what content is being amplified, to whom, and the associated impact. Turn on by default the tools to amplify factual voices over disinformation. Work with independent researchers to facilitate in-depth studies of the platform's impact on people and our society and what we can do to improve things. Yep, so you have unelected technocrats who, I mean, first off, based on completely unfounded evidence, are essentially labeling the president and his supporters white supremacists, but that's another thing. And the next thing are saying that they alone will amplify what they view as, quote, factual voices over disinformation, aka, we will set the narrative, we will tell you what's true or not, which is essentially what they're already doing, but they want to take it to a next level and to suppress and destroy any dissent or opposing opinion. That's what this is. It's very simple. You know what it is? It's fascism, which always seems to come back under a left-wing banner under the guise of virtue or empathy, just like communism, and always leads to loss of freedoms, loss of life, and total government control. That's what this is, folks. History is repeating itself right in front of your eyes. AOC is probably the worst example of that. I mean, just look at some of her tweets. Since it appears GOP leaders need a reminder, there is no healing from this without accountability. There is no unity with white supremacists. You know, the president's state has devolved dangerously. If you're too weak to do anything about it, you're too weak to serve. Once again, ratcheting up the rhetoric, showing that she has absolutely no intention of unity, but has only the intention to dominate public discourse. And that's because the left, especially the far left, have no respect for Western civilization, have no respect for the great society that's been created in the Western world. And even beyond that, no respect for country, and more importantly, no respect for the Constitution. Need further proof? Here's another tweet from AOC. Was barricaded for several hours. I'll tell y'all about it later. For now, we must focus on the task at hand to preserve the integrity of our democracy, hold accountable those responsible for their attempts to subvert our nation's elections, and then of course, the little caveat, just a little tail end right over here on the sentence, and shred our Constitution apart. When I call the far left anti-Constitution, when I say they disregard and disrespect the Constitution at every point and turn, this is what I mean. This is what they're about. People for Bernie, a massive blue check mark Twitter account. You're either Antifa or pro-fascism. There is no middle ground. The question today isn't which side you are on. The question has already been answered. We know who sided with fascism. Don't let them escape it. And so the irony is as palpable as ever. The hypocrisy as well. The true fascists have always been the anti-fascists, those who are trying to crack down on speech, dominate their opponents, ideologically dominate their opponents, destroy the Constitution, destroy what the country represents, burn cities down, attack their political opponents, and then feign virtue and pretend as if they have the moral high ground. This says it as clear as day. We've got AOC sentence right over here, shred apart our Constitution, and then this one, there is no middle ground. Those two sentences alone make the point for me better than I could with my own words, and so I won't over-explain it, I won't over-analyze it. You guys are smart enough to understand it yourself, and we'll just end the video right over here. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it like usual. If you did, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible, and I gotta get back to work, of course. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.